Every season on Murdoch Mysteries, we like to do a creepy episode. And what better to do a creepy episode than a murder in an asylum? What way to make it even creepier is to use some of our favorite female villains from past seasons.
I had multiple personalities stemming from a childhood trauma, and I had a very volatile personality that would come out in times of threat.
Mrs. Lind found out that her husband was philandering, so she killed him. And then she started to set up sort of a sting to see who was going to be honest with finding lost money. She appears to be a very lovely lady, but she's actually quite vicious, which I like.
The first time I was on Murdoch, I invited all of my lady friends to my cabin to have a hen party to welcome my new sister-in-law into the family. Unfortunately for everyone, I have a psychotic break. Another one, my second one.
Eva got men to kill for her in the first episode that I was in season 6, and then in season 7 she got a little greedy and she ended up killing someone herself. And I thought she went to prison, but I guess she went here.
One of the things about bringing back characters, especially to our loyal fan base, some of our bad villains are amongst their favorites. So if we can find a realistic or justifiable reason to have them recur every once in a while, I think it helps add to the mythology of Murdoch Mystery, and all of them are tremendous actresses, so why just use them once?
It's so wonderful when really great actors come on the show, which they do all the time, but when I get to work directly with them, often, Murdoch gets to do all that. In this one, it's me and 5 amazing actresses who are all really, really, really good, and so it's so much fun to play with them.
Why are you doing this to me?
Because you're vindictive and cruel. You know I don't belong in here, but you are keeping me here because you're afraid I'll take your husband.
We're in the dungeons. It's been 3 solid days of working in these asylum scenes and physical fighting and a lot of screaming and emotional people, so it's pretty intense. Because I've had an injury and I have a broken wrist, we obviously have to be extremely careful, so we have 2 stunt people who play me and play the person hurting me, and so we're doing this fabulous swapping in and out. So I'll do a bit of the scene and then she'll come and pummel them, and she'll step out and I'll step back in, and so it's actually makes for double the work, but it's fun to watch. It means I'm really badass because she makes me look really tough.
There's also not going to be a ward where patients are kept in isolation.
Can they be helped?
Well, at least they can be properly attended to.
The origins of the asylums were actually not medical at all. They tended to be developed by philanthropists and religious people who felt that there were individuals who required some kind of care, often relaxation or retreat from urban life. But over time, they sort of transformed into these large Gothic structures. Canada borrowed a lot of its ideas for asylums from the Victorian Britons, and they used these large palatial buildings, often with long wings jutting out of a central corridor. Often they were surrounded by gardens and were meant to make you feel small or kind of dwarfed as you approached them. And they tended to shut people away for long periods of time. There certainly were asylums exclusively for women, particularly in the British examples. It's difficult to know exactly how violent women would have been treated in specific instances, but it's likely, in general strokes, that they may well have been locked up in wards for quite a long time. There was very little in terms of rehabilitation.
Oh, I think it's great whenever we touch on something truly, historical and about, health or welfare of people back in the day. It is pretty dark, and it's great for stories. Dark, dark stories, but a little sad for the people.
We can't ignore the possibility that one of the other women in the ward is the killer.
What about Rose Maxwell's admissions?
She's a deluded woman, Julia. I have a duty to make inquiries.
We have a duty.
Today we're at Whitehurn Historic House in Hamilton, and we've been here quite a bit, and right now we're using the exterior, at least, as the asylum.
Whitehurn's located at the corner of McNabb and Jackson Streets, right beside City Hall in Hamilton. Whitehurn was built in the late 1840s, about 1848, for a man named Richard Oliver Duggan. It was certainly bought by Dr. Calvin McQuesten in 1852. And he and his children and his grandchildren lived in this house until 1968. So 116 years of continuous occupation in Whitehurn by the McQuesten family. The home was left completely intact to the city. So the furnishings, the art, the small pieces of china, everything's original in that house. We have letters and photographic documentation, so we know a tremendous amount about the family. their perceptions of themselves, their world, and how it was changing through over 100 years of history.
It's great to be able to do some horror on Murdoch Mysteries.
I'm a huge horror fan. That's why I was so excited to do this show, especially the 2 episodes I did.
Psychological horror. I like that a lot.
I think it's so fun to play villains. I don't get to do it often, and it opens a whole spectrum of play.
I'm not a horror fan at all. I get so scared in movies. Even just working in this building, walking down the hallways, freaks me out.
I distinctly remember when I was younger, I would set up these horrible, macabre death scenes for my mom to walk in on, and it never worked because she always walked in and laughed. So clearly my acting needed to improve.